Okay, sorry about that. Yeah.
You're good.
So who we are, I'm Devin Becker. I'm the head of data and digital services here, as well as the co-director of the Center for Digital Inquiry and Learning, our DH Center. And I've been working with Olivia and Evan on this for since 2018. Olivia and Evan.
I'm Olivia Wikle. I'm the Digital Initiatives Librarian and the co-director of our Center for Digital Inquiry and Learning, and also been working on CollectionBuilder since 2018.
I'm Evan Williamson, and I've been working with these folks for a long time. Devin and I have been around since 2015, and we kind of had a proto version of this because we wanted to replace Omeka in the classroom, and so it's kind of grown from there.
Yeah,
I'm called the Digital Infrastructure Librarian, by the way. Sorry. Yeah,
and we're in Moscow, Idaho, which is the north part of Idaho, on Nez Perce lands, and we are in 3 offices, just 1, 2, 3 here. So it's we work pretty closely together. So some quick notes before we forget. These are being recorded. So if you don't want to be on video, leave your video off. And we will be having office hours each day after class. These will not be recorded, but we're very happy to help you with any frustrations you might have. We'll also probably end a little early each day and then have kind of like, we'll turn off the recordings and be available to troubleshoot and work on anything. That's one of our plans for this week as well. So CollectionBuilder, you're all here because of it. It's our promotional site is at collectionbuilder.github.io. Where you can learn about all the different types and whatnot. Our motto here is you do the metadata and CollectionBuilder makes it work. And so the idea is that, that we will reward excellent metadata by the building of static sites that express that data in engaging ways. So yeah, it's been under development since 2018, and we've been looking at static sites since a little bit before that. All of our library digital collections are built with CollectionBuilder now. Most of our digital scholarship projects, including a recent CLEAR grant, including many different approaches, and then our library website, entire library website is now static too, and some of the code from CollectionBuilder informs that as well. In terms of grant funding, we've been funded by IMLS. We did a sort of a planning grant that finished up last fall. We're currently on an NEH-DH advancement grant related to the project called Learn Static, and Olivia's the PI on that. And we're creating, we'll talk about that at some point, but we're creating kind of specific learning modules based around static web and the techniques we're going to learn this week so that they can be reused in the classroom and imported in for other projects as well. And then we're in the running. Hopefully we will, cross our fingers, we'll get more IMLS funding this year to add someone to our team here at the library and put out some more opportunities for digital scholarship librarians, digital humanities practitioners to give more feedback and help us just to kind of maintain the documentation and tutorials and everything that goes into doing this. We've been working with a number of different partners, collaborators, users. This is basically from our planning grant. We worked with the State Library of North Carolina, New College of Florida, University of Houston's U.S. Latino Digital Humanities Program, and our local historical society, the Latah County Historical Society. And then we've had a lot of individual institutions reach out over the years and work with them. And we had a murderer's row of advisors for this project as well. And so basically, and we'll reiterate this again and again, but CollectionBuilder works with sort of 3 main pieces. A CollectionBuilder template, which is the GitHub repository that you click use this template to copy and then replace its demo contents with your own. And then the contents, which are a spreadsheet, the metadata there, and then an object of a folder full of objects. So we can work with image files, PDFs, MP3s, video files, and then there's also some small text documents that you would need to configure within the repository. We'll show you that. And then with that comes a full website with all these different visualizations. So these are the visualizations, and I thought I would click through our actual demo site just to kind of give you a lay of the land here. Starts by creating a home page. We call this the home infographic page that lists. This is the kind of out of the box version. Lists the time span, the subjects, the locations. Gives you a nice carousel here. A general description that can point then to the about page. Our browse page is kind of the engine of the collection, if you will, and a lot of places where you click will lead back to this page. At first, you'll just see, there's a listing here of all the different items in this demo collection, which are items selected from our own digital collections. If this is built automatically from the subjects, from what you would deem as your subjects fields, and then if you click one of these, say you wanted to see photographic postcards, that would go and search back into the browse collection. Again, this is kind of the engine. It always comes back and go from there. And say you were interested in this, snowstorm concentrator on Troy, Montana, and you were like, oh, I wonder if there's anything else around there. This is an item page that lists all the metadata that you choose to list. You can configure this. Again, it has the subjects there, and then you can also view it on a map or on a timeline. We only have, it looks like, one item there. But if you wanted to see the full map, you can click map, and these are all based on latitude and longitude coordinates given. This is another subject cloud based on locations listed. You can create as many subject clouds as you would like. And then let's see if we can see one of these. And if you wanted to see, again, this would point in, then you could click on view on timeline and see where this item lines up on the timeline. The basic timeline that we have featured is a table-based, fairly simple, but we think pretty actually excellent way to browse over a large collection or a small collection. And then we have a data page, and data has been, and you'll also see a big section of data at the bottom here. And it says collections as data, which is one of our inspirations, the collections as data kind of movement, motto, mantra. And so we try, and one of the great things about static websites is it makes your data kind of ultimately retransfigurable and transformable. So we have, this is just a browse, like a kind of table-based browsing option, but we have a variety of data options that are automatically generated from the site, including metadata CSV, a JSON, facets, which is actually a really cool thing we'll look at later, subject metadata, location metadata, GeoJSON, timeline that can be used with timeline.js, and the source code, which points out to the GitHub repository. And finally, we have an about page that lets you, one of the major things we'd like to kind of increase working on is having people write with their collections really easily. And so we have kind of about page, and you can learn to write in Markdown your about page and use these little includes to include images, postcards, audio, however you want to do that. But we want to make it so that you can learn how to use those includes and write really easily and create excellent contextual information about your collections as well as the actual collections themselves. And so this is all kind of reiterating that. And I will get out of here and hand it over. Oh wait, I wanted to do one more thing here. I'm going to talk real briefly just about the course pack, and that is, and the one thing I wanted to show you here, there's quite a bit here, and hopefully you've had a good chance to check this out. But these are our objectives for the course, and I just, I was looking at this today, and I just wanted to go over these. We really want you to understand how static website generators work and what advantages and disadvantages they offer. And then we want to get you familiar with the base options for CollectionBuilder, but also have you able to kind of, to step out into the various templates and do even more work and do more customization. And we want you to kind of, the other important thing we really want to have is that you can set up your own development environment so that you can easily kind of, turn it on, build a new collection, do another collection. And the practice and the reiteration is really valuable for this type of approach. And then, of course, be able to teach and introduce CollectionBuilder to others and build at least one customized digital collection. And so I will hand it over to Olivia from here.
Okay, I'm going to put the link to the CollectionBuilder documentation in the chat and then share my screen. So we wanted to just give you a brief overview of, wait, can you see? Hold on. Can you see the documentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. A brief overview of our CollectionBuilder documentation. We've worked really hard on this to make it really robust, and we have heard a lot of feedback that it's helpful, but we're always looking for more feedback. So if you run into something that doesn't make sense, just let us know. It's organized over on the left here, kind of in terms of how you would go through building a collection yourself. So it starts off with how to download software, which hopefully most or at least some of you have done, and goes into copying a repository, creating your objects, getting them ready to go, creating your metadata, then jumps into configuring your site and configuring the way that your site looks. So if you're going through these steps yourself, just kind of follow the layout of how everything's ordered in the navigation bar here. I wanted to point out that we have a few different versions of Collection Builder. So down at the, wait. So here on the front page, or is it? Okay, never mind. We do have a few different versions of Collection Builder that are listed here under templates. And we are going to be working with GH, which stands for GitHub Pages, which we'll explain in a second. But there are two other versions that are documented in the documentation, including CSV, which is for more robust standalone collections, and CDM, which stands for Content DM, which is a digital objects content management system. And that we have a version of Collection Builder that goes on top of Content DM as a skin interface. But the one you want to pay attention to is GH. So that is going to become important as you're looking at the object documentation specifically and the metadata documentation. You can see over here, there are objects for GH, objects for CSV, and so on. So if you're coming here and looking for the correct objects documentation for what we're doing in this workshop, be aware that you should look for objects for GH. And same with metadata, you want to look for GH metadata. After that, everything kind of evens out and the directions are pretty much the same. If there is something that's different, you'll see a big alert that alerts you to, if something's specific to GH, what to follow. So just so you're aware, that's what that looks like. Another thing we really like about these this documentation is that you can search for terms that you're looking for. If you can't find it just over by yourself in the nav, say if you're interested in configuring your subjects page, you can come up here to the search bar and type in subjects, and then it'll pull up every time the subject is mentioned in the documentation. You can click on whichever one looks the most relevant to what you want. So definitely make use of that search bar. Down here towards the bottom of the nav, there is a glossary section that lists a lot of the terms that we're going to be talking to you about this week. So we'll explain these as we go through our process this week, but this is an extra resource for you if you want to come and learn more about the terms that we're talking about. There are definitions here, as well as links to external resources to help you learn the tools or learn more about them as well. Then lastly, there is this extra section that has information on, these aren't necessary, but if you need a little bit of extra help with working with preparing your objects, there are some command line options here for getting a list of file names or renaming all your files to lowercase, for instance. And then in the software section, there's some extra software. If you have, a particularly rough data set that you need to clean, Open Refine might be useful for you. Other spreadsheet applications such as LibreOffice, or image editing software such as GIMP, which is free. These are all available, but not necessary to do Collection Builder. We just make them available here or link to them here in case you're interested in pursuing them. If you have questions about them, just let us know. I think that sums up our documentation. So I'll turn it back to Evan now.
All right, thanks. So everyone had kind of an assignment to get started in day 0, as we call it. So hopefully you've done some of this. You've kind of tried to do some installing of software, and we'll talk about that later. And you have a GitHub account, and you started kind of pulling together the demo collection that you want to work on with some metadata and some objects. And so I just wanted to do a quick kind of review and overview of object types as we're going to be using them in Collection Builder GH this week. And so there's 2 different really main types of objects that you can include in here. And so in what we've kind of suggested to you right now is some actual items that are going to go into the objects folder in your GitHub Pages copy of this template into your project. And so those are going to supports any kind of image files that you can use on the web, PDFs, MP3s, and those want them to be kind of a reasonable file size to be used on the web. Like you don't want to have TIFFs that are like 400 megs because that's going to be really horrible experience for your users. And so this is kind of, it's Collection Builder GH is really is not going to be doing anything in the background because there's no server-side processing like you might get with Omeka, where they'll actually create derivatives for you. So you got to do some of that work on the forefront. And what you're really doing in prepping your project there, in prepping your objects and prepping your metadata is preparing this little package that is the collection that's kind of self-documented. And so it's really helpful because you're getting all organized, just like you would if you were preparing for preservation and preparing to make reusable data. And so we think that that kind of process in getting ready to create a collection is actually really valuable and transferable, not just useful for Collection Builder. It's going to be useful. It's part of the process of preparing a collection for preservation and for research and reusability in general. So the other thing that I wanted to point out, however, is, and I'll start sharing my screen here too, is one of the most powerful ways that we've found to be using Collection Builder GH is actually with external file. And so rather than using a file name in your metadata, you can actually use a link to an image somewhere else. And so we, in Collection Builder GH, will support YouTube and Vimeo using the IDs from those platforms, but also you could have any kind of image that's hosted somewhere else. And so we often do this with students. So if we go and we send them off to our own collections, and let's say they are interested in this image, they can actually just copy this link to the image and put that into their metadata. And so this becomes a really powerful way to build some curation into these collections without even having to deal with the items themselves in your objects folder into your collection. So it's really very metadata based. And so that's something that's really powerful. And also you could also just have links to things that are external, and so that the records are not even items themselves, they're just kind of records pointing out to external items like, say, a journal publication. The important thing, and the thing that is a big stumbling block for people working with actual objects in the collection, is that everything needs to exactly match. And so everything needs to be ready for the web. And so one of the things that a lot of us do in our file systems is put a lot of spaces and characters and stuff like that in our file names. And on the web, that stuff isn't really going to work. And so you need to make sure that you're really careful about extensions, that you're really careful about your file naming conventions, and that case sensitivity really matters. So on Windows and on Mac in your file system, when you're going in there and looking at your Explorer, case sensitivity is ignored by Windows and by Mac. However, once you push this onto the web, almost all the servers in the world are Linux based, and Linux is case sensitive for file names. And so what happens is you have this file name that's like Evan capital N .jpg, and when you have it on Windows, it seems to work just fine if I have it all lowercase in my metadata. But once you push it up onto the web, it'll be broken because those are no longer the same thing on a Linux server as they are on Mac and on Windows in your local file system. And so being really specific about and careful about those file naming conventions and making it exactly match what's in your metadata versus what's in your actual files that you're looking at is going to be really important. And it is an important lesson to learn in general with your students and with yourselves about file naming. And so I'm just looking at my Collection Builder project here in this objects folder, and you're going to see here's my objects. And one of the things that I would suggest if you're on Windows and Mac is to go ahead in your Explorer and go into this. There's this option that says view. It looks a little bit different on Mac, obviously. And right here, there's a spot where it says show the file name extensions. And if you check that, it'll show the extensions. So knowing the real extensions is important. And for some reason, Windows hides that by default, and so does Mac. So you want to be able to be sure that all of this exactly matches what's in your metadata. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues. And one of the other things that we do suggest is, a lot of times when you're collecting images for a collection or objects for a collection in general, there's all kinds of random file names that you've created and, spaces, weird characters, all this stuff, and you put it together in this objects folder. And so one of the things we suggest is really taking that moment at this preparation stage to actually rename all the files following a convention. And so we'll often name it after our collection name. And so that'll have some sort of, short prefix and then just a number after that, and being able to just have a file naming convention that's applied across all the files is really going to give you a lot more order, and have that. And this investment in order and getting this organized does really pay off, because you're creating a package of reusable data so that it'll go into CollectionBuilder really clean, but it'll also be able to migrate into anything else. Like, for instance, if you wanted to migrate it into a Mecca or into a digital preservation platform or anything else, having it all organized, having the file names match up correctly, and having a file naming convention is going to be really powerful. And that's an important kind of digital skill for folks to learn, and for students who haven't been exposed to the idea of file naming and the file system, I think is a really important skill. So I just want to touch base on that really quick, and passing it back to Devin. Wait, got to stop sharing.
And so I just answered a question in the chat about, is the person that, the demo collection that Evan was looking at had really generic file names, but you don't need to keep that we'll have a kind of generic, we have this object ID field, which I'm going to show in a second, that could be kind of generic. But keeping those original file names is really good for digital preservation, and having them actually, readable by a human is also very good for digital preservation. So it's more important that you kind of find a consistent way of treating them and make sure that they match with the metadata fields that we'll look at in just a second. So okay, so we are now into the metadata piece. And I will talk about some required fields and give a quick kind of tutorial, show you how I work with a collection really quickly. But the major thing we kind of want to stress here is that we are using Google Sheets pretty much primarily for this. And we do not use Excel, because Excel breaks things. Not only, it also, when you download an Excel file as a CSV, they often add a little, what is it called, a BOM. Evan, what is that exactly?
Yeah, just Excel does not handle UTF-8, which is required for working on the web and working with Jekyll and Ruby. And it also, when it creates the CSV, which it pretends is correctly formatted and encoded, it adds this extra character called the BOM, which also breaks everything in Ruby. So you can't use Excel. And that's the number one problem that we run into with folks.
So that's my point. And I think the other thing that we really like about Google Sheets is all of our digital collection work, all of our digital scholarship work is collaborative in a way. And so having those sheets to be able to share and edit together and track the changes has been really valuable. And that's really, especially for our digital scholarship work with our grad students and our faculty, they can really see how the metadata then impacts the website and vice versa. So that's the main point there. I'd like to look, first off, we're looking at the GH metadata piece here oh, here it is. Okay. So again, we're working with CollectionBuilder GH, and these are the metadata fields that are required. And so there are only a few, and then you can create as many other fields as you would like, but we have specific fields that kind of work in specific ways for our metadata. The major, and a lot of this goes into the code and how the code works, and without some of these fields, then the site will not work as it's expected to. So these are the required fields for CollectionBuilder GH. The object ID, which is one word, and should be kind of usually the first column. We usually make this the kind of generic piece. So if we have, for instance, we have a collection called the Psychiana collection, the first item in that would be Psychiana 001 or 0001 if there were more than 1,000 items. So that's the first piece in the CollectionBuilder GH. The file name, which is what we're kind of talking about with file name period, is that exact place, either a direct link somewhere online to an item, or the item's file name itself, and it's listed in the objects folder, and you'll see where the objects folder is in the repository later. But it must exactly match the actual file name. Again, we're going to reiterate this, and the case should match as well. And it's important to get right initially, and not be loading up things and then try to change it, because there's some issues sometimes with Git not tracking that change as well. It's like Excel and the file names are where things really get messed up. And so this is why we hit it really hard initially. The other two required fields for every single item are title. The thing will actually work without title, but everything will look very strange. But having a short descriptive title is always important for digital collections. And then the format. And the format is where we use a lot of logic throughout the code. we said, different items get treated different ways based on how their format is laid out. So this is really important to get right as well. For an image, this would be an image JPEG. You could have image PNG, application PDF, audio MP3, and video MP4. And these are based on MIME type standards. And they start usually with the generic option and then get to a more specific option after the slash. So format's really important, and I'll show that in the demo. And then if you were going to link out to a YouTube ID or a Vimeo video, you can add a field called the YouTube ID or Vimeo ID, and then you would get the ID, which you can get from a basic YouTube link. You can see that there. So that's the YouTube ID for this larger link, and you can get that anywhere. Same thing with the Vimeo. You grab the number-based ID and load that in, and then that will automatically pull in that video using their APIs into CollectionBuilder. So I'm going to look at, do a little quick tutorial here, and you have the option of following along. I'll move fairly quickly, so it might be a little difficult, but if you would like to make a copy of the spreadsheet that I'm going to work in, just click this link below, and it'll give you an option to make a copy, and you can kind of try to make this work as well. This is my base copy for this, and this is some really messy metadata. And can you all see my metadata? Just give me a thumbs up, Evan.
Can you zoom in a little?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Is that good?
I think that's good.
Okay. So this is just, literally messy metadata that we have from an English professor that we worked with last year. And it's not particularly great, but it really feels, but there's some problems here that we'll fix in a way with some Google Sheets kind of practices. And I know some of this is just probably review for you all, but sometimes it's nice to see kind of how somebody else works. So this first field is this object ID, which is required and which every item needs. To generate objects ID, we call this the SITW collection, which I've just lost the framework for. I think it's something in the wilderness. Oh shoot. Well, let's call it the something in the wilderness collection for now. It's been a year. So you can just use this little cross that shows up in Excel, in Google Sheets, and grab that. And if you click on that and drag it down, this will add automatically a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll add the numbers and create that sort of base object ID that you can use for your collection. So it's a really easy way to generate that piece there and drag it down to the bottom. And using this little cross that shows up is really powerful in a lot of ways, and we'll show it again in another way. Another thing that I often do to kind of go through our metadata is use the filter function here. And so I'm going to use my thing here. So I'm going to filter by YouTube ID so we can describe the specific ones that are videos for this collection. And so here's the filter here. You can just create a filter, or you can also go to data, create a filter there. I often use this one. And if you turn it on, if you select a column and then turn it on, you'll get this little upside down green triangle, and you can click there and filter by whatever you'd like to see. So I'm going to get rid of all the blank ones. So all the items that do not have a YouTube ID, I'm going to push OK. And that will filter down so that I have specifically these types of items. So I need to change, I do not need a file name for these. If you have a YouTube ID, they do not require a file name. So that's one required field that changes based on if you are using these video IDs. But I definitely, and I have a title and I have an object ID, but if you remember, we definitely need the format as well. So I'm going to go back and make sure that I have the correct one. And so I'm going to say, oh, okay, so for video, you use video/MP4. And that's what, that's how YouTube usually uses it. So I'm going to put that in there. And so I'm going to have that there. And then I also know that there are some other fields required here. And I wanted to kind of fill out some of these other ones. And I'm going to get down here to type. And so all of the fields that will be useful, that can be used within CollectionBuilder GH are on this page, but you can also add your own idiosyncratic fields, no problem. And so I can see here, so for an image, for a video, for a moving image, I'm going to get this image/moving image. I'm going to add that into the type here. And so now I have image, moving image for the first one, video MP4, in the language, which is English and ENG. And I want to use all three of those actually for each of these. So I'm going to grab that. So I clicked the first one, and then I held down Shift and clicked the third one. And then I've got my cross showing up on the bottom right, and I'm just going to drag this down. And there you can see it. And maybe you can see a problem already. So one thing about the drag is you need to watch out for the numbering when you don't really need it. So we don't need it to be called MP4, MP5, MP7. It will actually work fine, but you want your metadata to be correct. So in this case, I'm going to actually click on 2 of the cells and have them both say MP4 so that the logic in Google Sheets knows that that's what I want. And then I'll drag and it'll work just fine. So now I've filled out the types and formats for the YouTube IDs. And now I'm going to actually want to go back and clear that and just have the blanks. And so this will kind of flip the filter so that now I just have image, still image, and image JPEG. And so I can go here now to the first item and see that these are actually correct. And I would like to add English here. And we're going to do that same piece here and drag it down all the way to, I think I went one too far. So delete. And so now we've actually got all of the videos and all of the images correctly identified as images and videos, and so they will correctly work within the collection builder framework itself. So now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to clear. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to turn it off by clicking this little remove filter button here on the right. And so now we're back and we have all of our kind of types and formats filled out. We are still missing some required fields and some things are not working as they should. For instance, a lot of these file names have, as you can see, do not have the extensions. They are without extensions. And so in order to do that, I'm going to do a quick formula in Google Sheets and do something like this. And actually, I don't want to mess with anything beyond the things that are filtered out. So I'm going to go back and filter it down into just those image items again. So I'm going to clear it and just have the blanks. So these are only images that will require the file names that they have. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to copy that, select all that. Well, actually, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to copy the file name, put that as file name, and then I'm going to use a formula, which is a really powerful, piece in any spreadsheet. And I'm going to push equals, and that'll start the formula. I'm going to select the item, and these are all JPEG files. So then I'm going to add a string at the end to this and push and I'm going to put into my piece here, JPEG, and push return. So now I have group photo.jpg, and I can copy that formula all the way down into the piece, and I have that there. And now I'm realizing, actually, you know what? I want to do one more thing here. I want these all to be lowercase, just to make sure. So I'm going to do one more formula, file name equals, and I'm going to say equals. And then there's a nice piece here called lower, which converts a string to lowercase. I'm going to grab that group photo, end it, and pull it down. So now I have all of these, and we're great. But one thing you might notice now is like this, if you look in what it is, it's actually, we're going to want to turn this into just the value rather than the formula that's creating the value, because we're actually going to get rid of these two things. So I'm going to select here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to click edit and go to paste special and push values only. So what I did was I copied this entire thing by pushing Control C, and then I went to edit and I pasted in the values specifically. And you could do that also by pushing Control Shift V as well. And so now you can see, actually, we're all good here, and I can delete these. So for instance, if I deleted this initially, you'd see that this reference got all turned out. So I would have messed up everything if I just tried to delete it. But now I can delete these and not worry about it. So now we have a file name or a YouTube ID for each of our items. We have the object ID, which is correct. We have the formats right. The last thing we need is just the title. And for this instance, I'm just going to say we're just going to use the object ID and go in. And actually, Google would have let me do that, but I'm going to pull that down. Again, it's a formula, so I'm going to push copy, and I'm going to push Control Shift V, which will paste in just the values, or you'll get this and you can just push values only. And so now we have the values. Okay, and so that is the kind of like, now we have all the required fields. And then we also have a number of fields that'll kind of give you the base kind of visualizations that you'd like. And so the fields required for visualizations are for the map, you'll need a latitude field and a longitude field. For the timeline, you need a date. For subjects, you need just plain subject. And for location, you need just plain location field. And you can see all of those are here. So we have a subject field, a location, the latitude, and the longitude. And so what I'm going to do is I would like to add latitude and longitude. I'd like this to be fully represented on the map. And so I need to get a couple different latitude and longitude options. So I'm going to go to a new tab and go to Google Maps. It will go. Huh. Oh, that's funny. Hold on 1 second.
Google Map is broken on my Firefox right now. You might just try it on Chrome.
You want me to try it on Chrome? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Pull up my Chrome. Sorry about that. What's going on with Firefox today?
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah. Okay. And okay. So here is the Google Maps option. And I'm going to look for, this was in our Taylor Wilderness Research Station. All of these items, all of these images are coming from here, which is way out in the middle of nowhere in Idaho. It's actually a really cool thing that Idaho offers. This they have like a semester in the wild here. And so here's the Wilderness Research option, and I'm just going to get a random kind of location here. And so if I right click on the map, and this you can use this as you add latitude and longitude for years. And I click on that'll give me this little menu here. And then if I left click here, just the normal click, it'll get copied to the clipboard, and I can go back. I'm going to copy. You're not going to see me paste it in because I'm going to actually grab this for a second. Let me get back into my spreadsheet here. And you can see here's where I copied it in. Here I'll get one more location. Let's say there was one by the river. And so we'll put those here. So I have the latitude and longitude. It's in the latitude column right now. And so I'm going to just drag that down. I'm going to have these both in here too. And then I'm going to drag this other one down, and we'll have them all represented. And then we're going to use a really powerful tool within Google Sheets and within any spreadsheet, wrangling system. We're going to go to data, and we're going to go to split text to columns. And Google will automatically notice that this is a comma-based version, but you can go, and if you had it, we often use semicolon in our you can see in our subjects and things like that. So if we wanted to break that out into 2 columns or many columns, we would use a semicolon. But here, they just needed to use comma. So you select comma, it had already chosen it for you. And now you have latitude and longitude for each one. You have a title, sort of poorly named title in some of them. You have object IDs. You have a lowercase file format, file names, and you have all the types and formats correct. And so that's the overview here of the kind of what you need basically to get right, and just some little tricks to kind of get you so that you can move through that quickly, especially when you're trying to build a full collection this week. So at this point, I will stop and I will turn it over to Olivia, and we're going to get started with actually building CollectionBuilder. Oh, and one note, today is kind of like, kind of getting the basics. Tomorrow we'll talk more like generally about Jekyll and how it works and how CollectionBuilder works in a more technical way. For those of you who are kind of, I know I'd be like, well, how is this working? So just bear with us, but hopefully it'll start to kind of become clearer as Olivia works through it too. Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put a link in the chat to our CollectionBuilder GH template. So as I mentioned before, GH stands for GitHub Pages, and GitHub Pages is a feature that GitHub has that uses the static site generator Jekyll to build out your repository as a website for free. We'll talk more about Jekyll and static site generators another day this week, but like Devin said, we just want to get you up and running as quickly as possible. So today I'm just going to sort of be replicating the steps to set up your collection that you'll do for your homework tonight, only that you'll be using the collection data you prepared, and I'll be using demo data that we developed specifically for this workshop setting. So you're welcome to follow along with me if you'd like. I'll be going somewhat quickly. And I'll show you where the demo data, where to get the demo data if you want to use that and follow along. But if I'm moving too quickly, or if you're just a person that wants to kind of sit and watch and learn that way, that's totally fine too. So just do whichever way works best. And if you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll also try to stop occasionally and just to let people catch up or answer questions, but you can always put questions in the chat and Devin and Evan will get to them as I'm going through. So I'll zoom in a little bit here. So this is a GitHub repository for those who maybe haven't seen one before. I'll give just kind of a little bit of a description of where things are to get started, because this might look kind of different to you. Over here at the very top left here, I can see this is my the owner of this specific repository. So in this case, it's the CollectionBuilder organization, and your own repositories that you make, that'll be your GitHub username. After that comes the actual name of the repository itself. So a repository is just a collection of folders and files, that storage space for them, where you can edit those files and collaborate on them with your collaborators. So this, as you scroll down here, you can see the folders here with a little folder icon, and the files with the little file icon over on the left here. And if I click on those, I get to go into that folder and see the files within that folder. To the right of the folders and the files are little statements of, these are called commit messages. So these are descriptions of the most recent edit that was made to that folder or to that file. And then to the right of that, I can see when that commit message was last made. So I can see when that folder was last edited over on the right here. And then, but I think that's enough for now, and we'll kind of learn a little bit more about GitHub as we get going. To get started, what you do with CollectionBuilder is look for this green use this template button, and you do have to be logged in to GitHub to see that. So if you're following along, make sure that you're logged in at this point, or if you're doing this later tonight, just remember to log in. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And this brings you to this form where you can create your new repository for from the CollectionBuilder GH template. It'll just copy all of those files over to your own repository, so you have the access to them and can edit them as much as you want. So you will probably just have one option for owner. I'm going to switch mine to CollectionBuilder, but yours will probably just be your GitHub username, which is fine. And then you want to name your repository. And with GitHub Pages, your repository's name is going to be, it's going to show up in the URL for your collection website. So you want to be really sure to follow those best practices that Evan was talking about. So try to make it all lowercase, don't have any spaces, and don't have any special characters. Try to maybe keep it brief. So I'll just name mine DHSI Demo 2022. You can add a little description. And then I'm just going to make mine public so that anyone can see our work in this collection. And I'm not going to include all branches. I just want the main branch. And that's all. So again, if you're following along, just make your repository name, type in a brief description. I've selected public, and I think it needs to be public in order for GitHub Pages to work. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And then go ahead and click Create Repository from Template at the bottom once you've filled out those things.
And we usually make everything public on GitHub. It's kind of an interesting, a lot of humanities folks, we always are used to working in private and behind closed doors, but you know, no one's like really going and looking at all your code on GitHub and judging it or anything like that. Just generally, we just work in the open and make it all available, and that's kind of the normal practice. So that's kind of what people would expect. So don't feel like it's a little bit threatening to put out this demo project in the open. Just make it in the open, and if you don't want it later, you can easily delete it.
So now I have my my own CollectionBuilder repository, and I can see that I just have one commit now, and it's my initial commit. So all of those commit messages that were made on the original CollectionBuilder GH repository the commit messages themselves don't get copied over, but the code gets copied over. So it's exactly the same as what you saw over there. But now I can actually edit these files. So this is what I want. Before I do anything else, I'm going to actually turn on GitHub Pages. So I'm going to turn my website on. I can do that by coming up to this top bar here where I see all these little icons and going to the settings section of the nav here. So I'm going to click on settings. And then it brings me to this page that's titled with general, but I want to scroll down on the left and look for the pages page. So I found pages, I'm going to click on it. And this lets me turn on GitHub Pages. So under the source section here, you have an option to choose which branch of your repository you want GitHub Pages, your website, to build from. You will only, if you didn't select the copy all the branches over from the GH template, then you should only have one branch, which is what how it should be. So that's what I have, is just my main branch, which is the branch that I want my collection to build from. And then you don't need to change this drop down, just leave it as root, because you want your branch to build from the root of the repository, or your website to build from the root of the repository. And then you can click save. Don't worry about selecting a theme, or you can in the future add your custom domain in if you want to. But basically, after I press save, I'm just looking for this little alert here that says my site is ready to be published, and then it gives me the URL that site will be published at. So I'm just going to highlight the URL and right click it and copy that link, because I want to save that URL so it's easy to go back to later. You don't have to do this step, but we always recommend it. So I'm back to get from settings back to code. I just came up here in this nav bar with the icons and went to the far left and clicked on code. That brings me back to the base of my repository. And now I'm going to go over to this little about section. This is over on the right here. And this is where you can put information about your repository that's really just quick information you want people to see as they come to it for the first time. The website itself is something that I want people to be able to see right away. So I can edit this about section by clicking on the wrench icon here. So this gives me the description that I already made for my site that has an actual space for me to paste my website. So I can paste in the URL there. I'm not going to add any topics or anything else right now, but that you're perfectly welcome to do that for your own collection if you want to. Once you've pasted that in, you can click Save Changes. And then your little URL is going to appear over in the About section. So I can go ahead and I'll just open this in a new tab. Once your site builds out, and it will sometimes take 30 seconds to a minute or two to actually build your site or the changes to your site. GitHub Pages just takes that little interval to build. So if you're following along and you're clicking this URL and it's showing up as a 404, that just means that you need to wait maybe a few seconds or a few minutes and press the refresh button, and then it should appear. So if that's happening, that's why. But once it does build, you should just see so the standard demo CollectionBuilder GH collection here. So I have my home page. It looks just like what Devin showed you, I have 5 demo objects in there already. My subjects word cloud, locations word cloud, my map, timeline, data, and about pages. So this is the demo. The next thing we want to do is actually add in our own objects and our own metadata to the repository. And I'll also say here that we use CollectionBuilder GH a lot for teaching. So we use this GitHub Pages feature a lot in the classroom because this version doesn't require you to download any software onto your computer. You can actually edit everything about your site right here in the GitHub user interface, which is what I'll be doing today. Tomorrow we'll show you actually how to pull all these files down to your computer and edit them and look at them on a demo web server on your personal computer. But if you were to want to just use this in the classroom in a really lightweight setting, CollectionBuilder GH would be a great option for that, because you can actually just make your commits, make your changes here in the GitHub user interface. Are there any questions, or do I need to take a break? Does anybody need help following along?
Just going to reiterate that, this is a lot of stuff, but we're just trying to give you a visual overview of this. All the steps are really well detailed in the documentation, and you'll also have this video to kind of go back through it. We don't really expect you to be able to follow along with this really quick talking from Devin and Olivia at this point.
But did I get it correctly? Like I had the desktop version of GitHub open and it just looked so different that I couldn't find anything. So I rather should work with the web version. That's easier.
So so you have GitHub desktop open, is that what you said?
Yeah, because
okay, so that's a slightly different piece of software than using the website. There's things that you can only do on the web interface. And so right now we're just covering the web interface. I believe tomorrow we'll get back to talking about what you're going to use GitHub desktop for, which is a different part of the process in version control and getting the stuff from that web version from the cloud down into your local machine.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of just give you both sides of how you can work with it, and maybe one is particularly useful for your context rather than the other. So tomorrow, Devin, I think, will show exactly how to use the GitHub desktop application. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to add my objects and my metadata, and the link to the demo data is actually in this repository. So all I have to do right now is scroll down to where below my folders and my files down here to where this README file is. And the README is something you'll see commonly across repositories. It's always posted underneath the content of the repository and just describes what is contained in this repository. So as you make your own collections, be sure to edit your READMEs to just give a little description of what your collection is about. You can leave some of the CollectionBuilder GH information if you want to, but it's a place for you to personalize information about your collection. I'm going to scroll down here to the demo CollectionBuilder with our workshop tutorial section. So this was copied from CollectionBuilder GH along with the rest of the repository. So I still have this data in here, the links to the data in here. First, I'm going to find the objects link. So this objects are collected in this zip file. This link right here, I'm going to right click. Actually, I'm just going to click it and it'll just automatically start downloading a zip file. That might take, if you're following along, it might take a minute or two to download depending on your bandwidth. So I'm just going to leave it for a second and let it download and go on and work on the metadata while we're waiting for that. So our metadata link to the Google Sheet for the demo metadata is right here. I'm going to click on it and open it in a new tab. And this gives me an option to copy the document, which is what I want. I want to make a copy so that I can edit it. So I click on that blue button there. And this metadata is ready to go. So if you're playing around, if you're following along, you don't have to make any edits to it. It has all the specifications that Devin talked about, except we'll have to make one change here and figure out the file name column that we want to use. So As Evan mentioned, you can actually just connect in your collection to objects that are hosted elsewhere. You can have a mix of objects you actually upload to your repository, along with objects that are hosted elsewhere that just have a link in the file name column. So this file name column right here has a bunch of links to these objects that are hosted on our web server. Sometimes we do workshops where we don't actually download the files, but today we are downloading them. So this is my file name link, my file name column that I actually want to use. So I'm going to just get rid of this this file name column here for today, delete it, and then make sure that my field name for file name is just file name. So I'm going to edit that. And then again, you can have a mix of links and objects. So it doesn't have to be just one column or the other in your actual collections. But I have my object ID here. You can see it's just that standard collection name plus number. My file names are all lowercase. My title is here. My format, which is that really important field, is here and ready to go. And the description and latitude and longitude if it exists, and so on. All the objects in this demo collection are taken from an actual digital collection from the University of Idaho's digital collections. It's called the Psychiana collection and is fairly interesting, deals with a mail order religion that was based out of Moscow, Idaho in the mid 20th century. So it has a lot of kind of really unique photographs and pamphlets and radio shows to listen to. So take a look at that if you are interested. But just so you know, this demo data is just kind of a subset of that larger collection. So once I'm ready, once my metadata is all ready, I can go up to File and press File and then go down to Download and click on comma separated values. This downloads a comma separated values file or .csv. And once you've downloaded it, locate it, but don't open it. So the reason you don't want to double click it to open it is because oftentimes Excel is the default application to open CSVs on your computer. And we don't want to open it in Excel because of it doesn't handle the UTF-8 encoding correctly. So I just want to actually rename it without opening it, because our next step is to upload it, but it has this really long name that won't work for our file naming that we want to do. So I can, on a Windows, press F2, and that lets me in to actually edit it. Be sure to follow the best practices of file editing that Evan talked about. So no spaces or special characters. Use all lowercase if possible. And I'm going to do Psychiana underscore metadata. So just keep it brief and pretty simple. So once you've renamed it, it's ready to actually upload to your GitHub repository. So I'm just going to set my file explorer aside here and then click back over to my repository, scroll back up, and then find the data folder right at the top here and click into it. So the data folder will become really important as we continue on, because this is the folder that the Jekyll static web generator is going to look into and use all of these other CSVs, these other data files to actually build out your customized version of your site. So you'll be coming in here a lot to do some customization in the future, but this is also where your the metadata that we want to add is going to go. So we want to come back here. Yeah, so we want to go in here and edit our file. Why won't it give me? That was weird. Okay, so when you click into data, it should say add file like this over on the right. So be sure, click into the folder you want, which is data. Look over on the right and find the add file drop-down button. And it gives you the option to create new file or upload files. We just want to upload our CSV that we just created. It gives you this big window to do it. You can browse your file explorer if you want to. I'm just going to pull mine up and select that file and drop it over. And then it very quickly uploaded it here. I can tell it's ready to go. And so the next step is to create my first commit, which is just that little message to yourself. It should be brief, that says what you did at this point in the history of the repository, so that you can look back at it later to find out the changes that you made, or that your collaborators can know, looking at your changes, what it was that you did. So I'm going to say add metadata. If you have a longer description that you want to add, you can add it here, but that's not too common. You want to keep this box checked to commit directly to the main branch. So basically, all you want to do is just type in that commit message and then click the green commit changes button. And once that's done, it'll take you back to the base of your repository here. I can go into data just to make sure my Psychiana metadata CSV is sitting in there. But the next step we want to do is upload our objects as well. So I'm going to go back to my file explorer where I downloaded the demo objects. They are a zip file, a zip folder right now, so I need to extract them. And I'll just keep them in downloads. And double click into that folder so I can just see that all of them are there. So they look good and ready to go. I can come back to my repository now and look for the objects folder. So this is kind of in the middle of the repository if you're following along. Go ahead and click on it. There are some demo objects in here. There's also a README in this folder that tells you kind of the specifications that we already told you about, what makes a good object size and file name and all that stuff. But we want to just add our new objects on top of the objects that are already here. So don't worry about these. You can just leave them there, or you can delete them if you want to. I'm just going to leave them, and I'm going to click on add file and upload files again. And I'm just going to go into my File Explorer and select all of the files and drag them over. So that's 66 collection objects that I'm dragging over. Now they are uploading, and it takes a few seconds as the green bar loads there. But I can close this now. I'm done with it. Then scroll down and make another commit message. And commit changes.
So your commit message is your note to yourself of the future. So how quality you make it will be how happy you are with your future self, or your future self is happy with your current self.
All right. So we've uploaded our metadata, we've uploaded our objects, but we have to take one more step in order to let Jekyll know that what metadata and what objects to actually use. And that is going to be configuring our site using the config.yaml file. So that is towards the bottom of your repository. If you scroll down and look for this _config.yaml file, click on it. And YAML is a type of data format that deals in key value pairs. So if I'm scrolling down this page here, I can zoom in a little. On my screen, the keys are in green, and then their values are in blue here. So basically, these are a set of variables that are really important to the sort of basic overall site settings of your website. And you need to go into this file and edit those values so that they are customized to your own site. You also see a lot of lines in this file that start with a pound sign. The pound sign signifies that that line is a comment. So it's human readable, the computer just ignores it. And we use the comments a lot to try to make this file as well documented as possible, so that you know exactly what to put into the value for each of these keys in this site. So if you'll notice, I can't actually edit it right now. I can click around, but I need to go over to the right here and click on the pencil button in order to actually get in there and edit the data. So I'm in here now. I'm going to start with the URL variables section and just upload or update the source code. So the source code is just a link back to your repository. It will show up on your website so that people can navigate back to your code if they want to see what it looks like. So I'm just going to open this in a new tab, my repository again, and copy that link and then paste it in on top of this one. And then the site settings are going to be basic things like your title, your tagline, and your description of your site. So if I'm looking at my demo site, I can see this is the title here. It's going to show up in the banner, and the tagline is right below it. Both of these are going to show up on all of your collection pages up here at the top, as well as on the home page here in the middle of your featured image. And then you also have an option to write a description, which will show up on your home page, but also in the meta tags for your collection. So as I get down to this description here, this will be, you want to make sure you have, some keywords that will bring people to, that will allow Google to index your site and allow it to come up in searches that are related to the content of your site. So just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my title here, say DHSI. And then the tagline should just be a really short phrase. And your description should be slightly longer. I think I'll just keep this description here for now to avoid writing a new one. Keep it, like maybe 2 to 3 sentences. And if these quotation marks are around it to protect it from breaking. So if you use a special character such as, say, a colon, the computer won't be able to process this correctly. So I took away those quotations, and then I have a colon example text. That is going to pose a problem because you'll notice each of these variables has a colon directly after it. So so Jekyll is looking at this and thinking that everything with that colon after it is actually a variable. So if you do have a colon in the middle of your value for any of these, you want to be sure to put those quotations around that text. So I'll just leave that there as an example. The author of the collection should be you, and you can name yourself however you want to. We often will just put our GitHub username in there. So that's one option. You can put your full name if you want to, or use a different name if you want to. It's going to appear in the meta tags for the site as well. And then getting down to the collection settings, this is probably this is the most important step for connecting your metadata to your collection. So we want to actually edit this field right here that says demo metadata and replace it with the file name of our CSV without using the CSV extension. So a lot of the time it's good to go just find that file on your computer and just copy it, just to prevent you making any typos as you type it in. I'm just going to paste it right over. And notice I don't put .csv there, so it's just the file name itself. There is an option here to, if you're creating your site as part of your organization, there's an option to put in your organization's name and link and logos. And so you can look at our University of Idaho digital collections to see kind of how that logo might look, but it's not, these are all commented out. As you can see, if I wanted to, add my organization name or link, I would just get rid of that pound sign and then edit this value right here. But I'm going to leave it in for now. Same with Google services. So if you want to add your Google Analytics ID, you can just get rid of this # right before this row, add your ID in there, and it will start tracking. And if I scroll down to the robots exclude section, this might be important as you're developing your site. So we can actually ask Google not to index our site for a while as we develop it. If you want that to happen, you can delete the # in front of no index true, and then Google will not index your site. So it won't come in when people, it won't come up when people search for things related to your website. After you finish your development, you probably want people to be able to find your site. So as a final step to your collection creation, you probably want to come back in here and put that # right back in front of that row, so that it will start being indexed again. So I'll just leave no index true for now. And then you don't have to worry about build settings. That gets into some more advanced things that you probably won't have to change. So I can make my commit here. It says update site configuration and click commit changes. And then this didn't automatically bring me back to the base of my repository, but remember, I can click on the code tab up here to get back there. And right now I'm waiting for my site to rebuild. And one thing you'll probably notice as you're working on your websites is that this little orange circle will show up right after you make a commit. Once you have GitHub Pages turned on, that means your site is currently rebuilding, and it will turn into a green check mark once it's finished, or it will turn into a red X, which means that something is wrong and your site might be broken, or your latest updates might not show up, and you have to do a little bit of troubleshooting. And probably if you need to, definitely get in touch with us if that happens. We're happy to help. But this should eventually turn into a green check mark. And once it does, we can look at we can refresh our site to look at our changes.
Can you click on the commits button there to look at the history now?
Yeah, so I made 4 commits, and you can see each of those commit messages that I typed in are here. If I click into a commit itself, I can actually see the file that I made a change to. So over on the left, and there are different ways of viewing this, so yours might not look exactly the same as mine, but in red here, it has the content that I deleted, and to the right, I can see in green the content that I added in place of that content that I deleted. So it's a really great way to view the changes that you've made.
One thing to also keep in mind is you can see how there was previous green check marks when, or not, back on the commits, sorry.
Yeah.
So once, if your site built correctly one time, that's going to be the one that is going to continue to be served on the web. And so if your site starts breaking, it's not going to, the most recent green check is the version that's going to be on the live web until it starts building correctly again. And so a lot of times what people are like, oh, it looks like it's working, but actually it hasn't been rebuilt because the most recent commits have a red X. Even though the live web still looks like it's there, your recent changes aren't actually getting reflected in the build.
Yeah, so mine's probably finished now. So this green check is showing up. I can come over here and I'll need to do a refresh. And once I refresh, I can see my title showing up, my tagline, the changes I made to the description, and most importantly, my objects. So this might happen to you. It might have cached your objects, in which case you'll need to either just do a simple refresh, or you can do a hard refresh by doing Control-Shift-R on your keyboard as well. So now I can see my objects. I have 67 items. And I have icons for my PDFs. My images are showing up as thumbnails. They look great. If I click into one, I can see the object item page here with the metadata on the right. I can see that there's quite a few subjects in the subjects cloud. The location, the map is working, although as I zoom out, I realize that I probably will eventually need to recenter it if I want to use that. My timeline is working. the about page. Not much has changed there, but the data is updated as well. So there, you're probably seeing changes that need to be made at this point, and that we'll get into tomorrow with theming our site to be able to update the metadata on the item page, to update that center of the map, to update the featured image here. We will start getting into that next. And I think that concludes this part. Do you guys have anything to add, Devin or Evan?
Oh, that was good. Olivia.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia. Yeah, so again, that was really fast, but we hope that you can watch this recording, and you can also just walk through the docs and do this with your own data. We're just trying to give you a quick visual of what it looks like to do this process. And reiteration is important to try to figure it out and remember how it works. Doing it multiple times is always helpful.
And Angie asked, so that you're right, the demo objects are still in the objects folder. We haven't deleted those, and they won't show up though unless they're actually connected via a file name in a spreadsheet. So so that they're just there. You would probably want to delete them eventually, but there's really no reason to for today's purposes.
Yeah, the whole site is driven by that metadata. So the only thing that's going to show up is what's in your metadata and your configurations.
So are there any other kind of general questions about all that, or anything coming to mind that you see as I don't know, an issue or something you want to explore? Olivia, I think you were going to demo also how to create an issue for tonight's homework. Is that part of
Oh
that?
yeah, that's right. Yes, I will do that.
May as well just kind of overview the homework. And,
Yeah.
and do
Yeah,
that
I
as
can.
part of it.
Okay, I'll start with the homework and then show how to make
Oh,
an
wait.
issue.
It's Katerina.
Yes, this might be a really, really stupid question.
No.
I've never worked with GitHub before. So did I get it correctly that the whole program runs on it? So because you just click the things and put the codes in, and then it ran on that, and then I get everything in on the platform.
Yeah, so it is a little bit more complicated question than you than you think.
It's a good question.
And so yeah, it's a good question, and we didn't really do that. We just jumped right into it. I was going to do tomorrow a kind of more try to clearly separate out the different parts of this process. And so yeah, I think you kind of foresaw that.
No, but like I'll wait till tomorrow for the answer.
No, yeah, no, I'll do a really quick overview there. So right now what you saw is using the GitHub web interface. And so GitHub is a web platform for hosting Git repositories, and Git is a version control system. And so that website that you're interacting with and editing those files and then doing that commit message, that's using Git on this web platform that does that kind of version control hosting for us. The second part of it is to build out the website. And so Collection Builder itself is actually a sort of template that uses the static site generator called Jekyll to build the site. And so GitHub has Jekyll built into it. And so that's what this GitHub Pages static web hosting that is for free on the platform is it's taking this template, which is a bunch of source code, and then it's using Jekyll, the static site generator, to transform that into a complete static website, that live site that we actually interact with, and you can see that collection. And so it's taking your metadata and putting it through this generator and then generating that website for us in the background. So we don't have to install any of that on our computer for what we did today, because you can just use it, that software that's actually built into that GitHub as a platform for us. So there's a lot of that going on in the background that we just skipped through today, and hopefully we'll make a little bit more of those divisions clearer as we move forward. But does that kind of help your first bit of your question there? Or?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot going on. There's version control going on. That's Git and GitHub. And then there's Jekyll, which is our static site generator. And then there's Collection Builder, which is our kind of theme template that creates the site. And then, so in those components, what you're adding is your objects and your metadata. And then those other parts of the platform are building out that site for you.
All right, I'll share my screen and walk through the homework here. So your homework will be found in the course pack right underneath the outline of what we did today. So I'm up here with what we did today. And so we're in this wrap up section now. We just finished questions, we're discussing homework. If you scroll down past this point and go to the day 1 homework section, these are the steps that you should follow. And they're basically the steps that I just walked through. So again, that iteration is going to be key to becoming comfortable with Collection Builder. So we want you to copy a new a Collection Builder GH repository on your own. And there is documentation links spaced throughout the homework here too. So if you can't quite remember, you can either watch the recording that I'll send later today or go to the documentation here for how to create your copy your repository. You'll want to finish creating your collections metadata. So following the documentation, and the metadata template is the link to it is right here too. So if you haven't had a chance to get started, you can start with that. And if you don't have time to do, 10 objects today, just start with 1 or 2, just get a couple in there and start working with them. And then over the course of this week, you can add more. But be sure to have those required fields, the file names and file extensions match, and that your file name, remember that your file name is case sensitive. Then you'll upload your metadata to your repository. So here's a link to the documentation for that. It's what I just did. So you can also watch the video if you want to. Add the objects to the repository. Turn on GitHub Pages, which is what I did, and then adjust the site-wide settings in the config YAML file. So just what I did at the end there, where I adjusted the title, the tagline, the description, and added my metadata. And then the last step is to create an issue in our new demo repository. That is going to describe your collection and include links to your collection repository and live site. So I'm going to show you how to do that. GitHub has this feature called issues, which is really great. If I click on it here, it lets you kind of keep tabs on things that you want to do. So you can add issues that are to-do list for future work on your repository. You can also make issues that are communicating to your collaborators, or maybe you are a person that is working, you're using Collection Builder, for instance, or some other code that's out on GitHub, and you run into an actual issue and you need to let the repository creators know that there's an issue with their code. You can always find the issues tab on their repository and come here and make an issue for them to see and answer and work on. So today we're going to use issues for our homework in a little bit of a different way, as a way just to get you guys some practice in creating issues, and as a central place for us to put all of our new collections that we're creating. So you can come to the issues tab here. And again, this won't be in the repository that you're creating. It's the repository that I just created. So I put that link in here. So when it comes time for you to do that, just be sure to click on this link for the DHSI Demo 2022 repository. That will allow all of these links to be in one place. So I can come to my the issue page and click on the green new issue button. And then you can give your issue a title. So you can title it whatever you want. I'll just call it my collection update. And you should just write like a really brief description of what your collection is about. So like, I made a collection about dogs, for instance. And then you can, you want to add 2 links. The first is a link to your actual repository. And you can use the little, the text editing over here if you want to. I can make bullet points, for instance, and say repository link, and then go find my repository. I'll just open this in a new tab and then copy it. So that link to the repository will be the link to your GitHub repository, whereas the link to your website will be the actual like front-facing website that you created by turning on GitHub Pages. So I'll add that in here. And you can always preview your issues if you want to see how they'll look once they're posted. So I can see those links are working, the bullet points work. And then once I'm ready, I can click Submit New Issue. And that's the sort of final part to your homework tonight or tomorrow morning, whenever you work on this, is just add that issue in so that everyone can kind of check on each other's repositories. And I think at the end of this week, we'll have a little bit of a show and tell on Thursday to see what everybody's done. But again, if we know you're all busy, so if you don't have time to do it like a full-fledged repository, at least to get a few collection items in there to just have something up, and you can that way you can follow along with the rest of the week. And then there's a last step here, which is if you haven't had time to set up the software in your computer, be sure to follow the documentation for doing that. If you run into trouble, which is something that happens sometimes with downloading Ruby on a Mac, particularly, reach out to us or set up an individual meeting with us or come to our office hours. Our office hours, I don't think we mentioned, are 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Thursday this week. But if you, obviously those of you on the East Coast or in other time zones, that isn't convenient for you. So just email us to set up something separately, and we'd be happy to meet with you individually too. Our emails are at the top of this document right here, but they also should be, Devin and Evan should be copied on the email that I sent out at the beginning or last Wednesday, that shared the Zoom link with you all. I think that covers everything. Anything you want to add?
I was going to interject, with these collections, don't overthink it. We hope that you can kind of embrace the like playfulness of DH and in learning. And that's kind of what one of the big emphasis has always been in DHSI is, just be okay about learning something new and being confused and breaking things, and and just have fun with it, be able to learn something different and play around with it, and don't take it too seriously, don't overthink about it, and hopefully you'll learn some interesting things about static web and about Collection Builder through that process.
I'm going to stop the recording now and then